Hello, I'm Neeraj Murarka, CTO and co-founder of Bluzelle. Welcome to the first of a series of videos I'm putting together to introduce the latest version of Bluzelle, also known as Meyer. Briefly, Meyer is the third release of Bluzelle, following Bernoulli, which was launched at the end of December 2018, and Lovelace, which was launched at the end of June 2018. Meyer's focus is on providing a high-speed cache service to games and applications. Today's video will show you a quick code example of both a client that reads data from Bluzelle and a server that writes data to Bluzelle. The goal here is to communicate how simple it is to integrate the Bluzelle cache into your code so that you can immediately begin to use and benefit from the cache at a minimum of cost. We aim to ensure that in under 5 minutes, Bluzelle can be integrated into a game or application. So, what we have here is a client file. It's client.js, and I'm going to show you some client code here. So, please look at the line here that I've highlighted, line 39. The really interesting part here is this part that I'm highlighting. What we're doing here is we're getting a connection to Bluzelle on the fly, and we're doing a quick read of a key value pair that is identified by the key ID. And we're setting the return value to profile. So what we're doing here is what's called a cache aside pattern. I'm first asking the cache, hey, do you have this value? If the cache has that value, it'll quickly return that value. If it doesn't have that value, which is called a cache miss, it won't return that value. So hopefully we get a cache hit and profile has the object. Now, if profile does not have it and that's a cache miss, we'll now proceed to this line, which is line 44, which is also interesting. Line 44 represents what your client will typically already have or what you might have already programmed into it, where you're basically talking to your existing backend, which is probably an existing database server. It might be Mongo, it might be SQL, it might be some sort of middleware, but the point is, this is what you already have, and all you're doing is you're adding the single line of code above it saying, ask the Bluzelle cache first for that value, and see if you can really quickly get that data back from Bluzelle at the edge before you even bother talking to your middleware. So the benefit here is pretty obvious. You can get a really quick response to getting your data instead of waiting to talk to your server on the back end and, of course, burdening your server with all the additional overhead of talking to it every time you need data. Why not just get it from the cache? So that's really interesting. I'm going to now move over to server.js, but before I do, just keep in mind that send to server is actually calling, ultimately, something called request data. So this is the other side. Your server that is sitting on the other side, let's just say it's running in this function. What is it doing? Well, it's probably getting, using an existing server-side cache called Redis, which is wrapped around your existing database. And you may or may not be using Redis, but I just put this in here for completeness. But ultimately, you're reading your data here from an SQL server, maybe a Mongo server. So this code here represents your existing middleware. Now, you ultimately don't really want to be hitting this very often because this is slow, this can be slow, and there's latency of talking to the server. But ultimately, whenever you do hit this function, what we want to do is we want to add this one line on line 49. And what does that do? It's basically telling Bluzelle, hey, here's this key value pair, just store it. Now, within seconds of calling this function, Bluzelle set, the entire Bluzelle network is going to have this ID and profile value. It'll be stored in the cache. And that means that within seconds, any client that asks for that ID value here is going to get that profile object really quickly. The cache will have been preloaded with that value, and now the cache is active for that object. So really, for adding data to the Bluzelle cache, you just need this one line added to your server code. And going back to the client, you have to add this one line to read. So it's really one line for client, one line for server. Very simple. And again, you're not changing anything in your existing code. You're not removing references to your existing database. You're not changing references to reading from your existing database. Everything is the same, just this extra one line of code for Bluzelle. So, I hope you found that very interesting. Thank you for watching this first video. I'd like you to please look at my next video, which will be coming out soon, where I'll be showing you a live demonstration of the performance characteristics of Bluzelle's cache.